My name is Liz Hallock, and I am running for Washington State Governor as a Green Party candidate.
And what made you decide to run for governor?
Well, I feel that Eastern Washington, even though our current governor used to be a city attorney out here in Selah, has been lacking representation from the progressive side of the Eastern Washington folks. My biggest issues that I am running on are, as we were discussing before this interview, are the electoral system and problems with campaign finance and the primary system that we have in Washington State. I'm also a big proponent of Medicare for All. I am a cancer survivor, and I'm also a small business owner. So those are issues that are really important to me, and we've forgotten about a lot of the problems in Eastern Washington. We have a big problem with domestic violence, missing and murdered Indigenous women. So I wanted to highlight some of the issues that were happening on the eastern side of the state, and I want people to know there actually are a lot of progressives out here in Eastern Washington, despite some of the stereotypes people might have.
And so what made you become part of the Green Party?
Well, it's kind of interesting story. You know, when I was about 18, 19 years old, I got involved when Ralph Nader was running for office for the presidency, and I, throughout my 20s and 30s, stayed pretty politically active. But what I really found after being a Bernie Sanders delegate to Clark County in 2016, I found that some of the values of the Democratic Party had changed, and I have been looking for something that is still pro-environment but more pro-people, and I don't take any corporate donations. I see that we have a failing tax structure in the state, and there's a lot of tax kickbacks and promises to big corporations like Boeing and Amazon those are all fueled by the Democratic Party, and so we definitely need to move away from the corporate political model, and that's what the Green Party really stands for. It's the Green Party. Most people identify as kind of eco-socialists, so they definitely want a Green New Deal, lots of new jobs, and they really want all different kinds of business models, including small business, and that I see the financial inequities in our state as one of the biggest problems. That's really visibly apparent out here in Yakima.
And what kind of experience would you be bringing to this job as governor?
Yeah, so my experience is kind of interesting. I started out, passed the bar exam in Washington in 2009, started out doing criminal law and some open government law, which that kind of includes like public records access, opens meeting law, that kind of thing. Through that, I started doing more land use and municipal law. So that's kind of my background, and what it became is a government accountability mission that I kind of became on. When I was much younger, I worked on dealing with mortgage foreclosure issues and landlord-tenant issues. And I remember a professor of mine saying, this is way back when I was in law school, the biggest challenge of the 21st century is going to be economic and financial justice. And I think that really ties into what we're seeing today with the Black Lives Matters movement, with all of the requests and clamoring for more economic justice in this state and this country. I think financial justice really is the big issue, especially in Washington State.
One of the big issues in this race right now is the pandemic. How has COVID-19 been handled? Do you have, what are your feelings about this?
Well, I would have, and I was advocating from the very beginning to go the way that many of the matriarchies, right, like New Zealand and Iceland went. Very intense lockdown at the beginning. I think we were really relying on people just doing the right thing, and unfortunately, that has not been the case. As you know, I am involved in a Supreme Court case against one of our local counselors here who we believe encouraged people, right, to defy the governor's orders. And I think it was just today, a federal court threw out a lawsuit against, challenging Jay Inslee's orders as unconstitutional. They absolutely are constitutional. And I think the biggest issue is that, there is a lot of entitlement in this country. And here in Washington State, we're not focused on caring for each other, what our bigger issues and goals are. And I think that's part of the problem. There's just a lack of cohesion in this state. And we see that a lot there's a lot of rhetoric about West Side, East Side, and that sort of thing. That's why I really wanted to run for governor, to show that, I understand the East Side, I understand the West Side. We are one state, and it's really important if we're going to get through this COVID problem that we all recognize that. It's kind of crazy because my grandmother was the only survivor of the Spanish flu when she was 7 years old. And so I grew up in Pennsylvania. And so in Pennsylvania, people are taking this very seriously. It's a much different attitude because we had that horrible history in the teens. So really, it's just part of a process of getting people to unite and understand that we're all one state, and we have to beat this thing together.
Another really big issue right now is the whole thing about police violence and racial justice. How would you be handling this as a governor?
Oh, my. Well, I started out as criminal defense attorney. The biggest issue for me out here in Yakima has always been civilian oversight. I know that in Seattle you do have civilian, at least some reporting mechanism and boards in King County and the city of Seattle for police and sheriff oversight. The biggest issue is that our entire economic system, our land use systems, urban planning systems are really based on a lot of historical and structural theories of racial inferiority. And the police are there to maintain that order. If you look at the city of Seattle, that is one of the most redlined cities in the history of America, that and Portland. So I actually, one thing I've thought a lot about on perhaps even a national scale, and people talk about reparations. What about reparations for redlining? I think it would be relatively easy using some of the MIT researchers' data to go back and see how individual families have been affected and their properties devalued by redlining, because that was a federal policy that you could not get a federally backed mortgage if you lived in a certain zip code, right? We really need to reinvest in communities rather than spending so much on the police state. And of course, a big thing for me is ending the war on drugs. I was very involved in I-502. I own a legal marijuana store. In the beginning, people said the world was going to burn down, and that did not happen. So that whole experiment, I-502 takes away asset forfeiture money from the police. It is a defund the police program, and it works. So I think that we need a lot of creative solutions here.
And before we started this interview, we were talking about ranked choice voting. Could you explain that to the listeners, what that is and why it's a good thing?
Ranked choice voting is an election system where the majority of voters have their voice heard. So the way that it works is you would pick, let's say for governor, the top 3 candidates. And if your candidate doesn't advance to the next round, well, we use your second vote and give a vote to the next person. It's basically a runoff. So what we have here in Washington State, and I think the gubernatorial election is a great example of that. We have a lot of people, Washington's a strong Democratic state. A lot of people are going to vote for Inslee. And in second place, it could be someone who is not the majority's second choice, third choice, fourth choice, even fifth choice. So the way our primary system is structured right now, we get kind of a polarized winner, polarizing candidates. If we move to a ranked choice voting system, you could rank your choices, and someone who reflects more of the majority's view would advance from the primary. So this is a big issue here in Yakima County. Yakima County was sued just a few days ago by One America, and Susan Soto Palmer, Benji Aguilar, candidates who are Latino and ran for office. The way it works in Yakima County is you quite often get a Latino candidate who might come in second. And then you have so many Republican candidates. Usually you get, a whole slew of, and not saying that Latinos are never running as Republicans, but we've had it twice with Susan Soto Palmer and then Deb Manjarres here, where the Latino candidate wins in the primary and advances to general. And then you get a candidate who is sort of on the fringe, but they come in second. And so they're not the second choice of the Latino candidates. Then the district-wide election goes to the whole county to vote. So in a county where half of the county are Latino, and I think 30% of the voting age population is Latino, you never see the candidate of their choice make it to the county seat. So what they're asking for in this lawsuit is additional commissioner seats, but also this ranked choice voting system, so you don't get a fringe candidate advancing to the primary who definitely doesn't reflect, the majority's first, second, third choice in a lot of cases. So ranked choice voting, I think we need to adopt that in Washington State, and it would be really beneficial to Yakima County in particular.
Seems like a really reasonable system. Who's been fighting against the system?
Well, like everything in life, the old guard, the people that are content with things never changing, that's who's fighting against it.
And if elected, what would be some of your other legislative and administrative priorities?
Well, absolutely, we're going to have to deal with a very difficult budget situation. And of course, such a large portion of our budget centers around education. This is actually, I'm a mom of two, and this is a new opportunity actually for us to think about how we can use online education and perhaps even save dollars. Although we want our kids to absolutely have quality education. And we have to do something about kids who need special education in person. It's a catch-22 because there is COVID-19. But I absolutely am not going to cut basic services like the domestic violence programs. We need to beef up our child abuse reporting hotline. And we need to make sure that, the people services still are maintained and that the programs that protect our environment are still maintained during the budget crisis we're probably going to be facing in the next few years.
Do you have any plans to kind of fix our very regressive tax system?
Oh, I am definitely a supporter of a capital gains tax. We have the most regressive tax system in the country where the poorest people pay a higher percentage of their income in taxes. And I even support it. There's a lot of exceptions to certain retirement funds, homes, businesses. When you have an LLC under Trump's tax cuts, you pay a lot less taxes since the last 2 years, and you also benefit from these capital gains. So I do support changing the tax system. And I also think the biggest thing is we get a lot of promises, empty promises from big corporations that they're going to bring jobs if we give them these tax deferrals and these tax breaks. And we saw that with Boeing. It never materializes. They need to pay those taxes back to us, whatever was deferred, right? And we just need to be more focused on people and stop giving handouts to big corporations.
So you're campaigning in a very unique time. How has that been? You can't really go door knocking.
Oh, yeah, I know. And my daughters and I were going door knocking. We love to go door knocking and meeting people. I still am an essential worker. So I still have to go to work and put my mask on and talk to people. And people love to talk about these issues. So we've been doing a lot of virtual meeting, and things like this are really great. And it's just so fun to get the word out. And I'm very thankful to have my family and to be able to be doing this during this time.
We're getting almost to the end of our time together. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
Well, I am actually very proud of the progress that we are making on the Black Lives Matter issue. I live here in Yakima County, and a few years ago, I did my interview with the Yakima Herald in a Black Lives Matter shirt. People were just used to be so offended by that. And I am actually quite proud of the progress we've made. However, here I am in Selah, and I'm in Yakima, the city of Yakima, but in Selah, they just threatened to arrest you for chalk art if you make Black Lives Matter chalk art. So we have a long way to go, and we need to talk more about economic justice, holding Amazon accountable for the externalities and problems that it creates. Actually, I think I'm the only candidate in the voters guide that says that we need to make Amazon a public utility owned by the people. So it's really important that we keep having this dialogue. And it's so important that we don't just get complacent and we think, hey, once Trump is gone, everything's going to be easier and better. We really need to keep our foot on the gas pedal.
And if people want to know more about your campaign, where should they go?
New Deal Washington. So people should go to newdealwashington.com, and I always check, Twitter and Instagram and all those fun social media accounts.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank you for having me. It was great questions, and it's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to Talk to Seattle, and I've been your host, Jason Rigdon. If you liked this episode, would you please share it on social media? Most podcast clients have a little share button. Click that and tell people why they should listen. If you want to support Talk to Seattle, would you please give the show a rating and review on iTunes? It really helps new people discover the show, and it makes me happy. Follow Talk to Seattle on Twitter at TalkToSeattle, and email any questions, comments, or suggestions to jasonrigdon@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening.